Hi and welcome back if you've watched any of the previous videos. My name is Tim Spees and I'm serving as a guide to help people find the light in life. To help people make it past a shallow or meaningless life or an empty or merely emotionally based life to find the one who said, I am the life. We have been taking what is reasonably and arguably the greatest journey any human being can make. One to find the ultimate purpose to one's life and what it means to truly live a successful life according to the standard that was sent by the Creator himself. In the first video series, we established a few important things, namely that more and more people are so empty and lonely and miserable that they are killing themselves in increasing numbers or drugging themselves numb to avoid thinking about the purposelessness or meaninglessness or shallowness or emptiness or wrongness of the life they are living. We examined human nature and clearly concluded that we are more than molecules and proteins, that we have a metaphysical part to our nature that has traditionally been called our soul or spirit or personality. We further concluded that using observation and sound reason, that being a marvelously biological machine with interrelated systems that depend upon each other for the whole to function, that such a machine requires a designer or creator to account for even that physical aspect of our nature, let alone the fact that we have metaphysical parts to our person. We then turn to trying to find or determine who or what that designer or creator is like. We use reasonable criteria to briefly examine the various major figures of history who claim to speak to the human condition and find solutions to mankind's greatest problems. And we evaluated those persons using three criteria. Namely, that they first claimed to speak for the creator of the human race. Second, that the solutions that they provided actually addressed the primary problems the human race struggles with, namely pride, fear, and selfishness. And third, who validated their message with special things they did that provided evidence that they did speak for the creator of the human race. We did this and only one person was standing at the end of that evaluation. The person who claimed or who called himself the unique son of the creator, the light of the world, and the life and truth that men need. In the first part of this second video series, we looked at the messenger's message and compared it with the false message that is proclaimed by the very system that claims to represent him, the Christian or Bible-based religious system. We saw that his message was not one of, quote, believe this stuff about me and you'll go to heaven, unquote. Instead, and in contrast to the false message, his message was one of action that would impact how people live day to day. It provides the solution that people need to the pride, fear, and selfishness that bind us and prevent us from being what the Creator wants us to be as human beings. Finally, we took a closer look at perhaps the main thing which people use to nullify the messenger's voice and his actual message, that is, the Bible. We saw that the reasons the religious leaders give to people to convince them that the book is what should be looked to as the Creator's message to mankind, that those things are erroneous and false. We gave examples of the Bible's content, apart from the messenger's words and teachings, that contradicts both established facts about the physical universe, contradicts itself, and finally and most importantly contradicts the messenger and his message. So where does this leave us? It leaves us at a wonderful place where we can again look to the Creator's messenger and learn more about him. Let's start with repeating the messenger's message that was heard a few videos ago. And the messenger's message is this, that the Creator of the human race exists, and he wants us to have life as he defines that. He sent his only perfect messenger who revealed what that life is. The messenger said we must look to and listen to him and him alone to understand what the Creator of both our body and soul wants. That we ought to make him our leader and thus do what he says. And what are the core things he wants us to be doing? It is to love each other and thus actually care for and take care of each other. Not just the natural family, but all people who live around us while we live out our lives on this planet, and to care about what is true and right, false or wrong. And just to be clear, money or material things cannot substitute for love. Okay, so let's begin the process of getting to know better the messenger who went by the name Joshua of Nazareth. As we learned in an earlier video, the person who is the subject of the 4 books with the authors' names of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, which books have been buried, unfortunately, at the beginning of what is labeled the New Testament, is the person of Joshua of Nazareth. His name was translated as, quote, Jesus Christ in most popular Bible versions, Jesus being the Hebrew to Greek to English translation of the Hebrew name Yahoshua, and Christ being the Greek to English translation of the concept of the Anointed One, a Hebrew concept meaning enlightened of God. The most important part to understand about his name is that it is not that important, other than an identifier of whom one is speaking about. In other words, the Creator does not care about the pronunciation of his messenger's name that the different languages or understandings cause. Rather, he cares about whether we listen to him and do what he says. Very simply put, Joshua of Nazareth is arguably the most influential person in history. He has affected and influenced and changed more human beings for good than any other person in history. The reason this is so is because he does clearly address the primary problems of humanity, that is pride, fear, and selfishness, and he provides a solution to overcome them. Contributing to the why he has changed more human lives for good than any other person is because his claims and his story are authentic, genuine, and believable, unless you have a closed mind against the metaphysical. Remember, we have 4 separate eyewitness accounts of his life and teachings. This provides a high degree of certainty that the accounts are accurate, where they provide a unified story of what happened. And they do on all major or important aspects of Joshua's life and teachings. It is no more unreasonable to believe that Joshua existed than to believe any person of history existed during that same time frame in history. Now, if you have a bias against metaphysical or spiritual reality, then you might dismiss him on those grounds, but that is an invalid reason to dismiss him, as we have seen. His message is revolutionary. It always will be, for mankind is not revolutionary by nature, but lapses into status quo states of one person or people exercising authority over another and eventually taking advantage of each other to one degree or another. One person or persons proclaim they ought to be the leaders of others, and they use force to bring their will to pass, and they enjoy the spoils of having people serve them. This is the history of mankind. To deny this is to be unreasonable and ignorant of history. Mankind's legacy is not one of peace, love, sharing, harmony, construction for good, unity for each other's good. To deny this is unreasonable and demonstrates an ignorance of history as well as a denial of the current state of the world. I have found that while atheists like to claim that people of faith like to believe false fairy tales, many atheists like to deny the very state of things right in front of their nose. The simple fact is, as we have learned over these video series, that we or mankind or people have a serious and fundamental problem. Our nature is one that is naturally ruled by selfishness, fear, and pride. Those aspects of our nature are our darkness, that is the cause of all conflict and wrongdoing on the earth and in history. But a light came to solve that problem. So, in a nutshell, humankind has great trouble breaking free from the darkness that binds both our individual souls as well as the collective whole. We hate change that pushes us into greater selflessness, courage, or humility. In fact, we need something to overcome our resistance to change. We need a revolutionary leader who is always available to each of us and who can enable us to be the human being or change agent that we're supposed to be. We need a leader who can show us the way to a life rightly lived. A leader who can provide us with what we need to overcome the dark side of our nature. We will take a look at what Joshua the Light provides in later videos. There are many voices today that seek to deny that Joshua of Nazareth ever existed. I am not aware of any other historical person who lived in about the same time frame in history as Joshua did, who are under a similar attack as to questioning whether they existed or not. Since we have 4 accounts of his life from 4 different authors, all independently corroborating the basic story and teachings of Joshua of Nazareth, I would suggest that those who are pushing to essentially destroy him by claiming he never existed, have some agenda they are serving in doing so. Joshua, the messenger and revolutionary, taught plainly that the vast majority of people would be against him due to the darkness that abides in them and how his light offends them. There are many voices today who, while not claiming he did not exist, yet claim that we cannot know if his life, actions, and teachings were recorded accurately. I would counter with the same points made regarding his existence. I would suggest that all of the various attacks or claims which seek to question the existence of Joshua of Nazareth, or which seeks to claim that we cannot know his message, claims, life, or teachings, are coming from the same place. And what place is that? Well, Joshua the messenger taught that he was and is the light of the world, that the world of humans was a dark place where selfish, cold hearts reigned, people with hearts who would naturally take from and harm others who got in their way. The messenger, the light of the Creator to mankind, came, and what did humanity do with him? Well, we attempted to snuff out the light by destroying his body. In essence, we said, we will not be ruled by anyone, especially by someone who says we need to love anyone more than our own lives in this world. That is simply too much to ask. And so, the voices continue today to try and snuff out the light that our dark human souls so desperately need. He was not destroyed by the pride and fear and hatred of men. Rather, he showed that even death would not conquer him, and he defeated death to prove that all he said and did are true, that he is the messenger of the Creator, and that our Creator wants to be our personal and caring Father. I have found that people will do just about anything other than spend time truly and sincerely looking into the person and claims of Joshua of Nazareth. This is both unreasonable and irrational. People spend their lifetimes looking into various things, some no more important than how to prepare food they like or the details about some machine like an automobile. Then along comes the light of the world through some means, and people immediately start to question something about him. And as we have seen, they start attacking the very one who can bring them life. They say things like, oh, he never really existed, or you cannot believe that the account of his life and teachings were accurately recorded, etc., etc. To all those who proffer such lame excuses as to why they will not look closely at his person and claims, I ask this. Is it possible that the account of his life and his sayings and his teachings were accurately recorded and then preserved in those 4 little books? Please let me repeat that question, dear viewer. Is it possible that the account of his life and sayings and teachings were accurately recorded and then preserved in those 4 little books? The answer is obvious to all those who are not bound by the darkness. At that point, it is easy to determine those who might actually be open to learning something about him from those who have no interest and who have shut their hearts and minds against him, and who have only empty excuses as to why they will not consider what he has to say. Sadly, religious people do the same exact thing, which is they bury Joshua under their Christ traditions and beliefs and ignore his persons and his teachings. What about you, dear viewer? What are your excuses as to why you don't carefully consider the words and teachings of Joshua of Nazareth? Too many other important things going on in your life to take the time? What do you value more than your soul? Hobbies, entertainment, making money, sex, even doing good stuff like helping others? What is more important than the destiny of your soul and knowing clearly what it is to engage in a life well lived? What is more important than love and peace and harmony with others? What is more important than knowing what is true and right and living those things out? Are you so dead as to no longer care about what is true and right? Or have you been deceived into thinking that you cannot know what is true and right regarding human life and behavior? Or perhaps you are relying upon your Bible or Christian religion, and in so doing, you believe you know the light in his way. Do all of his warnings of the nature of, quote, not everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord, will enter the kingdom of heaven, but he who does the will of my Father who is in heaven will enter. Many will say to me on that day, Lord, did we not speak true things about God in your name, and in your name heal people, and in your name perform many miracles? And then I will declare to them, I never knew you. Depart from me, you who said you cared about what I said, but you did what you wanted in spite of what I said. Unquote. Does that not concern you at all, dear viewer, if you are a Christian or a Bible person? To those who are resistant to listening to the voice of the light of the world, the messenger of the Creator, I have one primary question. What teachings or sayings of his in particular offend you or that you don't like? People generally give me a blank stare at that point. They do this because at some level, whatever they do know of him is good, and they have nothing to say. The truth has shut their mouths. What can one say against teachings like, quote, love one another, unquote, or, quote, blessed are those who hunger and thirst after that which is right, unquote, or treat others the way you want to be treated, unquote. And so, we get to the root of the matter. It is not the human-to-human teachings of the light that people are against. It is his claims of who he is and what he represents that people have a problem with. Next time, we'll take a look at some of his sayings that tell us who he is and what his role is on the human stage of history. Until next time, be real, get past the shallowness and pretentiousness of typical American life, especially religious life, and look deeper to find what you truly need.